Most women are smart and ambitious, but they are underserved in financial literacy beyond just budgeting. When it comes to investing, digital assets, entrepreneurship, women's education on these topics isn't really out there. There's so much crypto and Bitcoin education that's scammy and cringe or overly technical. It's subject matter expert to subject matter expert, and it doesn't make sense for an everyday person. My goal with this podcast and with this platform that Stacked hopefully will eventually become is to create a world where we have subject matter expert to everyday person. So I'm going to use my experience, my network, and my background in the space to make things a lot more digestible and relatable to people like us, the girl who's buying Botox and Bitcoin. The truth is that the future belongs to people who understand how money moves and how tech changes incentives, and how can that be used to build leverage. Welcome to Stacked, the show that helps you become your own best asset. Because in case you missed it, you're allowed to have a high vibe and a high net worth. Welcome to Stacked, the show that helps you become your own best asset. Here we stack knowledge, leverage, assets, and standards until the life you want becomes inevitable. We'll talk digital assets, Bitcoin, and the future of finance, entrepreneurship, and wellness, because success isn't just what you build, it's what you can sustain. I'm Emily Dempsey. Let's get stacked. If you've ever thought, I want to understand money, build real wealth, and still have a life, you're in the right place. This show is where we make Bitcoin, entrepreneurship, digital assets, the future of finance simple, useful, and actually interesting. I'm not here to hype. I'm here to teach, translate, and bring you the best people. You'll leave every episode with a concept, practical move, and a new lens. No jargon and no hype. So who am I and why should you listen? So let's go back to the beginning. I grew up in Chicago in a suburb just north of the city. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial and heavy household. I come from a few generations of traders and investment bankers. So I really grew up around a world of numbers. I wanted absolutely nothing to do with that world. I really wanted to leave Chicago, go to the big city, and kind of make it on my own. I had my sights set on becoming a buyer for the biggest department stores in the world. So I learned that buyers had to have a really strong right brain and left brain, meaning you had to be really good at numbers, but also creative and have a strong styling fashion sense. So I had to appease my parents with this college degree. I couldn't get a fashion degree. So I studied economics and I had a minor in business. So I took a lot of, finance, business, economics classes. I'm an economist at heart. And my career in fashion was very much driven by P&L. So when you're a buyer at a department store, you're actually managing a small business within a much larger business. So my first job out of college is at Bergdorf Goodman. I am on the advanced contemporary team. So literally the coolest brands at the time. And we would get to go to all the fashion shows, and then we would go back to the office, spend many, many late nights writing the buys, figuring out what was actually going to be in store. That was my first kind of sense of doing entrepreneurship within the greater ecosystem of a company. So that's my fashion career, a little budding into entrepreneurship. I also always had some sort of business that I was running from a very young age. Now, fast forward to the Brickell Babes and what's happened here. So the pandemic happens. I'd been in New York at this point for 10 years, and I was just really itching for a career change. I wanted to get out of the city. I wanted to do something different. I wanted to build something that was really mine. I wasn't quite sure what that was yet, but I moved to Miami. I had switched into commercial real estate, and I was working remotely at the time. I realized I didn't really have any friends here, and I didn't have any local businesses that I could trust. So Brickell Babes started actually as a Facebook group. I was in a different group at the time that was very anti-transplant, anti-women. And I'm like, there's got to be another way. There's got to be, people like me. I see the numbers of them moving here on TV and the news. Where are these people? I'm going to find them. So I very openly posted, hey, I moved here from New York. I used to work in fashion. This is what I'm doing now. I'm in commercial real estate. And I want to make some like-minded friends. If this resonates with anybody, reach out. So we ended up eventually spinning off our own Facebook group in March of 2022. We hosted our first in-person event about a week later. We had 20 or 30 people show up. Shout out to Moxie's and Brickell. And that was really my first kind of signal that we had something special. We had, the Facebook group at the time blew up. We had a couple hundred members inside the first week. Fast forward to today, the total community is over 70,000 women across all of our platforms. We're generating 600,000 plus impressions on a monthly basis. And we ended up turning community into business, so much so that I ended up walking away from my job in commercial real estate to focus on Brickell Babes and community and what does that look like. So today, the community is a number of different layers, everything from membership to partnerships are a really big part of our business. And then, of course, building and maintaining an authentic community where people get real value out of it. Okay, so now for the Bitcoin piece. So last 2 years, I went deep into Bitcoin. I decided, hey, look, I want to learn as much as I can about digital assets, about cryptocurrency, about Bitcoin specifically. So for the last 2 years, I went deep into the space. And what's interesting about digital assets and Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, all of it, is that there is not a class you can take. There's not university coursework. There's not a degree. It is such a new space that the only way to really learn is to jump in head first and teach yourself, and then opportunities start opening up. So I had experience at this point for a couple of years in commercial real estate, and we started looking at some different Bitcoin mining opportunities. Mining is a really interesting business because it is all about energy and how much energy can you get and how cheaply can you get it. So it's about leverage, it's about pricing economics and supply and demand. It's a really interesting business model. So I took this opportunity to look at over 100 sites, underwriting them, meeting with operators, meeting with production people, meeting with energy, real estate, trying to figure out, is there a way that we can tie the real estate to the mining operation? So I went all in. I went to as many conferences as I possibly could. I was on a plane every week to Texas, Ohio, Pennsylvania, you name it. I was there, me and all of the Bitcoin bros. And I really started learning just as much as I can about the entire ecosystem, from literally mining using stranded natural gas to what is a pool, what is self-custody, all of the aspects. And I now know how to ask the right questions, how to translate those questions into answers, who the key players are, who's legit, who's not legit. So this was a really interesting time to get into the Bitcoin space. Let's go back to the beginning. Bergdorf's to Bitcoin, the origin story. So fashion taught me a lot of things. It taught me resilience. It taught me grit. It taught me how to make a lot work with not a lot of resources. So I was managing profitability end to end. So everything from what do we buy, how much do we buy, to which stores do we send it to? Do we send it online? Do we send it to South Florida? Do we send it to California? And what does it take to win? What does it take to maximize your margin? We managed markdowns. It was really a full service, end to end business management education for me inside of a corporate bubble. And ultimately, I made the decision to walk away from that career. I did not want to be stuck in a corporate bubble anymore. I really wanted to pursue something more entrepreneurial, which led me to commercial real estate. So I was doing commercial real estate brokerage for a couple of years and learned a lot there. I really honed in on my sales skills. We were cold calling, we were pitching, we were underwriting deals, structuring deals, and just really turning over every single piece of dirt. I think that really pushed me in my entrepreneurial journey, but it was still kind of protected inside of a safe haven of being attached to a company. While I'm doing that career, I started getting really strong signal from the women's community that I had built. So the Brickell Babes here in South Florida, we're now South Florida's largest women's networking group. Our target demos are women late 20s to mid 40s, pretty high household income, with a large spending power. And it turns out that those demographics are really attractive to a lot of people and businesses locally, nationally, and internationally. And we took a long time to build a really strong layer of trust within our community. We did not sell out. We don't do short-term partnerships. We only do very aligned long-term partnerships with brands that we actually trust and use. So today our team has grown. So it's really been an incredible way for me to learn how to build a business from 0 to 1. I never expected to build a business from 0 to 1. But, right place, right time with Miami, and then just a lot of resilience and grit and pushing what it takes as far as social media distribution. So we're active across all of our platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. We're working on getting active on Twitter. So we're all over the place. We're constantly churning out content. And then we also host in-person events. So we've hosted over 200 events to date, everything from monthly happy hours to professional development workshops. We have a book club. We do volunteer work with Lotus House. That is our charity partner here in South Florida. It's actually the largest women's shelter in the country and a really incredible organization. And that is, that's what we've been able to do from a community building perspective. And then on the Bitcoin side of things, Bitcoin really taught me about money, energy, and the future of finance. I like to think of Bitcoin as the money and crypto or blockchain as the rails and the future of finance. So I didn't stumble into this. I followed the threads, and I think that's the theme here with both the Brickell Babes and the women's community, as well as Bitcoin and digital assets. And what really kind of inspired me to want to start this podcast is because I realized there were no resources out there for women that sounded like me, looked like me. I started sharing a lot of my journey in the Bitcoin space on my personal social media channels and was getting inundated with messages from people I know and other people in the community asking, hey, can I give you money? Hey, can you help me with this investment? What should I buy? How much should I buy? And that's when I started to realize I don't even know where I would send these people to start educating themselves. But what the purpose of this podcast is, and what the purpose of this platform that I hope evolves to something much greater than a podcast and digital show, is that we can become a resource to help educate people, and women more specifically, on the future of finance, digital assets, entrepreneurship, and wellness and longevity, and all of the things that it takes to build your dream life and become your own best asset in a very innovative, forward-thinking way. So why mining? So Bitcoin is a monetary network. Mining is where the money meets the energy and infrastructure. If you want to understand Bitcoin beyond the headlines, it's important to kind of pull back the curtain and understand, where is this coming from and how does it work? And that's when once I started going to different mining conferences, heat reuse conferences, actually getting out, boots on the ground, looking at different mining facilities, that's when I started understanding the way that the system worked on a whole other level. I think the concept of digital assets can be really intimidating for a lot of people because it isn't tangible. It's not something you can see. So actually getting out and seeing a mining operation, seeing the computers, setting up a mine yourself, it's a very, very good experience in understanding how things work. And what I can tell you is that every single person in the Bitcoin or crypto space that we've interviewed on this podcast, nobody has an advanced degree in cryptocurrency. There isn't one. And every single person that we've had come on the show or will have come on the show is self-taught. So there is no reason why you can't start learning more today. The onus is on you and the resources that are out there. There are so many incredible resources out there. And the best place to start is just by getting on your computer, getting on Google, buying a book, and learning as much as you can and starting to ask questions. Go to a conference. I evaluated over 100 sites in less than 12 months. We underwrote them. We met with accounting teams. We met with operators. We spoke with gas operators, gas purchasers, tried to put together some real estate deals. And ultimately, after looking at a very large number of both on-grid and off-grid sites, learned a great deal about the energy economics, the real estate constraints, the tax constraints. And this is where theory starts to become reality once you're actually having tangible conversations with other people. So why does this matter? This matters because you don't need to be technical to be here. You need to have the right mental mode. You need to be curious. And my job is to filter this world and what it means for you and your money. So what's the problem? Why does this podcast exist? Most women are smart and ambitious, but they are underserved in financial literacy beyond just budgeting when it comes to investing, digital assets, entrepreneurship. Women's education on these topics isn't really out there. There's so much crypto and Bitcoin education that's scammy and cringe or overly technical. It's subject matter expert to subject matter expert, and it doesn't make sense for an everyday person. And the truth is that the future belongs to people who understand how money moves and how tech changes incentives and how can that be used to build leverage. So my goal with this podcast and with this platform that Stacked hopefully will eventually become is to create a world where we have subject matter expert to everyday person and bringing these really abstract kind of out there topics to you. So I'm going to use my experience, my network, and my background in the space to make things a lot more digestible and relatable to people like us, the girl who's buying Botox and Bitcoin. So what's my point of view? What is the thesis of the show? The thesis is knowledge compounds. The more you understand, the more options you have. Wealth is built. It is not found. Skills, leverage, and ownership. Bitcoin is a monetary network. Mining is a bridge to the real economy. The better that we can understand digital assets and the way that the future of money moves, whether you're investing, trading stocks, or just looking to set up your 401k or your first IRA, that knowledge is power. I don't care if you buy Bitcoin. I don't care if you buy cryptos. I don't care if you buy ETFs. I care if you understand it. We don't do get rich quick. We do compounding. All right, so what are our pillars? Our pillars are the future of finance, Bitcoin, crypto, and technology, whether that's AI, Bitcoin, or blockchain. We'll talk about everything from mining to energy to Bitcoin basics that don't insult your intelligence. Business and entrepreneurship is our second pillar. We'll talk about how businesses actually make money. How can you get recurring cash flow from founders and operators who've actually done it? And our third pillar is wellness, longevity, and relationships. Because nervous systems, hormones, power dynamics are all so important when it comes to building your dream life. Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't know how to self-regulate and take care of yourself, it's all for nothing. We're here to build our dream lives and become our own best assets. Guests. What kind of guests are we going to have on the show? We will have operators, founders, investors, attorneys, subject matter experts in their respective fields coming here to spill the real tea and pull back the curtain. My goal isn't to interview for vibes. It's to extract the actual framework for what works. You'll get the playbook and we'll translate it into what it actually means for you. If you want to be early to the future and you want to become your own best asset, this show is for you. Make sure you subscribe, like, and leave a note in the comments. And I want to leave you with one tip today. Start with this rule. The more you learn, the more power you'll have. Let's get stacked. That's a wrap on this episode of Stacked. If this one added value, share it with someone who's ready to level up their financial life. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a rating and review. It helps us keep the show going and reach more people who are serious about becoming their own best asset. You can subscribe to our newsletter at www.stackedassets.co for weekly intel on Bitcoin markets, business, and living well. Follow along on socials at Stacked Assets or my personal at Emily Dempsey for more on Bitcoin business and building the life you actually want. I'll see you next week. Stay stacked.